Hey guys, and welcome to another video. This time I'm going to take a look at Legacy, the format where you can play every card from Hard Gold Soul Silver up to Call of Legends, or no, Legendary Treasures. So you have all the black and white Pokemon and all the Hard Gold Soul Silver Pokemon in one format. And there are no changes because whenever a new set releases, it's not allowed in Legacy. So we have this format that will never change, it will always stay the same. And a few people asked me to do a video about it, and so I took a look at the format and I came up with this deck here. This is not a new idea. It used to be played at Worlds 2014, and the season before that it was very rarely played, not very popular, but it only gained popularity just before Worlds because it was able to beat Pyro, but I'm not going to go into detail here. So first of all, the important thing of this deck is Flygon from Boundaries Crossed. It says between turns you put 10 damage on every of your opponent's Pokemon. So the good thing is that it's put damage counters, so it doesn't get prevented from anything. And you don't need to attack, so it's just an ability, which means that when you don't attack, you can do other things. For example, you can use Effect of Tropical Beach, which allows you to draw cards until you have 7 cards in your hand. So this is super good because you don't really have to attack with anything to do anything at all. So you can always use Tropical Beach. Unfortunately, this is a very expensive card, but Legacy is expensive anyways. There are even cards that are, I think, more expensive than Tropical Beach, like Celebi Prime, and it's very expensive to play this format. So I could only use the cards that I had anyways, and I have 3 Tropical Beach. I would have played 4 if I had 4, actually, but having 3 is fine for this deck. So you can end your turn and then draw 7 cards instead of attacking. This is very good. So with Tropical Beach and Flygon, you can always draw cards and set up other cards. And the cards you want to set up besides Flygon is Dusknoir. So with Sinister Hand, it says you can move as many damage counters from your opponent. So when you deal 10 on everything, let's say your opponent has 6 Pokemon in play, 1 active, 5 bench Pokemon. Then you end your turn, use Tropical Beach. Then you can draw, like, let's say you draw 4 cards. This is very good. Then you have this 140 HP Flygon active. Every of your opponents gets 10 damage. Then your opponent does something, attacks, your Flygon get damage. And then everything gets 10 again. This is 120 damage. And you still draw cards. So basically, like, you draw 4 cards and you deal 120 damage because you can move it all on one Pokemon. So this is where Dusknoir makes 10 on everything, like 120 on one Pokemon. And you can also spread it, like when you deal 120 on one Pokemon, let's say you want to deal 120 damage, you shoot 120 damage. That would be worse in Dusknoir because, for example, when you want to knock out a Pokemon with 100 HP, then you deal 20 damage too much, or even just knock out a Pokemon with 50 HP, then you deal 70 damage too much. But with Dusknoir you can spread this, so from the 120 you deal, you can only use 50 to knock out the Pokemon. And especially with Flygon, what is great is when let's say your opponent has a Pokemon with 50 HP on the bench that you want to knock out, then you can put 40 damage on it. It's not knocked out, but when you end your turn it will get knocked out, so you even save 1 extra damage counter. Then with the ability to move damage counters, and everyone knows Accelgor, which used to be a big thing in a few formats, and for 1 double Colorless energy you deal 50 damage. And then you shuffle Accelgor back into your deck, your opponent is paralyzed and poisoned, and you get to keep your double Colorless energy card, you don't lose this one, you shuffle your Accelgor back into your deck, and then you can promote a new Pokemon. And the thing is, you attack with deck and cover, then you can put Flygon active again, everything of your opponent's Pokemon gets 10 damage, but your opponent is paralyzed, so he cannot attack most likely. And you deal so much damage. Then you can move all the damage back on one bench Pokemon with Dusknoir and attack with Accelgor again. So this is the important thing. Usually when you paralyze your opponent, you have to make something to knock the active Pokemon out in your turn, or poison it so it gets knocked out at the beginning of your turn. But with Dusknoir you can just move all the damage on bench Pokemon, always paralyze the active one, and then at some point your opponent has so much damage you can just knock out everything. Speaking of so much damage that you can knock out everything, here X-Ball Mewtwo comes in play very nicely. A lot of Pokemon need 3 energies, 4 energies to attack with. For example, Genesect EX, Darkrai EX, Keldeo EX. All of these need a lot of energies to attack with. Then you can attach a double Colorless energy and attack with X-Ball. Then you deal 100 damage at once. This is very important to maybe sometimes you need to knock out Pokemon. This is good against everything that uses Garbodor because you can get damage on the field without using abilities. And then you can play Tool Scrapper, discard the tool from Garbodor, and when you manage to deal 100 damage somehow, then you can use Sinister Hand and knock out the Garbodor just by putting damage on it. Or even, like I already said, 90 damage is even enough. So when you attack once with Accelgor, get one Sand Slammer out, you have enough damage to knock out Garbodor, which is why Garbodor doesn't stop your deck even though it only uses abilities. So this is why Mewtwo is very important, because when your opponent has like one Pokemon in play only, because your opponent will try, when he realizes you've played this Flygon, he will try to not play a lot of Pokemon in play. So he will try to have a slim bench, not a lot of bench Pokemon, and only use one Pokemon to attack with. But with this X-Ball Mewtwo, you can in one turn just knock out the only Pokemon your opponent has, and he has nothing else. So this is why Mewtwo is good, because it kind of forces your opponent to play more benched Pokemon. Another great card for this deck is Pichu from Heart Gold Soul Silver. The attack doesn't need any energy card, so you can attach double colors to your active Pokemon Retreat, and then still attack with Pichu. And it says both players can search their deck for as many basic Pokemon as they like and put them all on their bench. So let's say your first turn, you have a Level Ball, you have an Ultra Ball, you can search your deck for Pichu and then put 4 basic Pokemon on your bench. And then your opponent is allowed to do the same. And here's the trick. When your opponent doesn't realize you play Flygon, which he should because you put your bench Pokemon first, but a lot of people don't realize how strong the deck actually is, and then they put their bench full. And also Pichu then is sleeping, because the attack puts itself to sleep. And then there's a Pokebuddy Sweet Sleeping Phase, which says as long as it's asleep, it doesn't get damage. So when you attack with Playground, you have a 50-50 chance of having an untouchable Pichu. And then you have a very slim chance if you flip 3 times Tails. It's still asleep, so next turn you can use Tropical Beach, draw cards, and then you have still your Pichu, which prevents from getting damage. But even if you flip heads, getting your Pichu knocked out is not a bad thing, which is why I play Twins. It says when you have more prize cards left than your opponent, you can search your deck for any 2 cards. So this is like Teammates, but you can even play it when nothing got knocked out in your last turn. Teammates, of course, is a card which is not allowed in this format. It's an X and Y card, and you are only allowed to play Black and White and Heart Gold or Silver cards. But in this, Twins is even better, because with Dusknoir you never draw prize cards. You move the damage around, and then at one turn you draw all 6 prize cards. So Twins is insanely good, because once your opponent takes 1 prize card, you can always search your deck for any 2 cards. So you can search for Rare Candy Flygon, Rare Candy Dusknoir, you can get Tropical Beach from your deck, you can get Max Potion, which I will explain later, and all cards just with Twins. And then you use Tropical Beach, and then you draw even more cards. This is why this deck is so consistent, and why I really like to play it. So Twins is a very good card in this deck. And then I have like a few counter cards. So there is this Kyurem from Plasma, and Plasma is a big played deck. Usually you would have a lot of problems against it, but with Mr. Mime, Kyurem only deals damage to the active Pokemon, so you can prevent your Pokemon to get, like, you can prevent your opponent from getting like double knockouts with a 30 damage from Frost Spear. So this is why Mr. Mime is important. It's also good against version Genesect, because Megalocannon deals 20 to the bench Pokemon, so when he attacks twice with Megalocannon, your bench Flygon will have 40 damage, and then it's enough to get knocked out. So bench barrier is very important, and Mr. Mime also in matchups you don't need it, you can promote it. The promoting strategy I will explain too when I got through all the Pokemon. So then you have Spiritomb. Version Genesect would be a very bad matchup, because with G-Booster they can just one-hit knock out your Flygon, but we play Spiritomb, and with its ability Sealing Scream, it says no player can play any Ace-Spec cards, which means your opponent can't attach G-Booster. This forces him to attack with Megalocannon. So what he will try to do is always use Red Signal for Spiritomb, knock out Spiritomb. And then you can promote Flygon, your Flygon doesn't get damage. So Spiritomb is very important. But this wouldn't work really well, because your opponent knocks out the Spiritomb, you don't have any Spiritomb left, then you lose. But with 2 Super Rods, you can always put the Spiritomb back onto your bench immediately. It gets knocked out, and then because you use Tropical Beach every turn, you can play Twins to search your deck for a Level Ball and a Super Rod. Then play the Super Rod, play the Level Ball, get the Spiritomb again. There are also two Tool Scrapper in this deck. Once because Garbodor, so you really need the Tool Scrapper. And when cards are in your prize cards, you don't really have access to them, so you need two Tool Scrapper. And against version Genesect, when they already put down the G booster, you can play Tool Scrapper, then put on Spiritomb, and you're fine. So when your opponent is forced to attack with Megalo Cannon and doesn't draw into his Plasma Energy, you can just use Max Potion, heal all the damage from the Flygon because of Mr. Mime. Your bench Pokemon don't get damage, so you can heal the damage from the active Pokemon. And then just wait a bit. And then at the end, like I already explained, you can just attack with Mewtwo. And from time to time, you can use Accelgor. When it fits well, when you draw into your Shelmet, you put it on your bench. When you draw into your Accelgor, you evolve it. Then when you happen to draw double Colorless, you can retreat deck and cover to get 50 extra damage off against version Genesect. So this is just great. So this is what the whole strategy works like. I also play a Town Map. So when I really need one card from my prizes, because of N, I usually don't want to draw too many prize cards. But when I play Town Map, I can choose the one card that is in the prizes. You also might have seen that I only play one Accelgor, and the reason is I would play two, I think, but with Town Map you can get the Accelgor if you really need it. And since you always get some damage with Flygon until you set up your Shelmet and have a double Colorless energy, the second Accelgor is not really needed. And I think even if I had one free space, I think I would play one Mewtwo-EX, which can copy your attacks. But I'm not entirely sure because in some matchups you have struggles with your bench space. In some matches you don't really, so Mew also, like Mew is a Pokemon EX that you can start with, which can become very problematic. I would consider Mew, I think I would test it, but I like this list a lot, so I don't have any problems with this, so I will stay how it is. So N, of course, because you don't draw prize cards, N is very good, you always draw 6 and your opponent goes down and down and down. This is why I play 4 of them. I don't want to discard a lot of cards, so I only play 2 Professor Juniper, which does the same as Professor Sycamore, but is from Black and White. Then I have this card here, Professor Oak's New Theory. I only have one of them, but I think if I would have 2 or 3, I would play more. Just because, like, it's like an N, but your opponent doesn't get more cards. Sometimes it's very annoying because you help your opponent setting up, like he goes down to like 2 hand cards and attacks, you play N and he draws 4 at the beginning of the game. So this is kind of annoying when you play a lot of N, and Professor Juniper always discards a lot of cards. So I think I would play like 2 Professor Oak's New Theory, maybe 3. I also was thinking about cutting one of the twins just because it's not good on your starting hand. And then I play 1 Skyla because it can search your deck for Rare Candy and Tropical Beach. If you have 4 Tropical Beach, I think I would cut the Skyla because Twins is just better. So I think if I had all the cards, I would play 1 Professor Juniper less, 1 Skyla less, 1 Twins less, and then 4 Tropical Beach and 3 Professor Oak. But everything else I think is very good. Then also I play Junk Arm. You discard 2 cards, search your discard pile for a trainer card, which used to be items. So it says trainer on this here, but it means items, because what we call item cards now used to be called trainer cards. This is kind of confusing, but Junk Arm only gets you item cards. So with Junk Arm you can get Max Potion, Tool Scrapper, another Super Rod, Rare Candy, or Float Stone. So by playing Tool Scrapper I can get away with only playing 2 Max Potion, only 3 Float Stone, because sometimes I like more. In theory you can also Junk Arm for Computer Search or Ultra Ball, even though you discard your whole hand, so I guess it won't happen a lot. Yeah, and then I play Computer Search just because it searches your deck for any card. You can get Tropical Beach, you can get Rare Candy, double Colorless energy. It's a really cool deck. Yeah, so this is all about the deck. And then I will talk a bit about the matchups. I won't have a game at the end of this video, but I will include it in a different standalone video. So I played a lot of Legacy with this deck. I I think, yeah, I have 40 wins and 40 games and 34 wins already, so I only lost 6 times. This is pretty decent, and the games I lost was because I faced 2 bad matchups. One game I lost because I didn't play Pichu, which I included after that. So my opponent could just, like, he played version Genesect with Celebi, so he could get energies fast and then get rid of my Trapinches too early, and because I only got 1 at a time, I couldn't win against it. But then I included Pichu, and then I always won against version Genesect. And I lost 1 game against Languorous, Laser, just I didn't have a really good start. My Mr. Mime was priced too. And then I lost 1 game against Blockade Snorlax, which says I cannot retreat. And I started with Pichu, so he just, because I don't have any switching cards, he just waited until I decked out. That was very annoying. Yeah, but so the decks I've seen most were a lot of Empoleon Dusknoir. So Empoleon Dusknoir uses Empoleon from Dark Explorers, which says you can discard a card from your hand and draw 2 cards, together with the Execute from Plasma Freeze, which can always come from your discard pile onto your hand. You never discard cards, so you basically, once during your turn, you may draw 2 cards. This is a very good ability. It has also 140 HP, which is decent for a non-EX in this format. And for 1 energy card, it deals 10 for each Pokemon in play. So with a Silver Bang, you deal 150 damage. Then you play this Empoleon together with Dusknoir. Because you can draw 2 cards every turn, it's very consistent. And with Skyla for Rare Candy and then Ultra Ball, you don't discard cards for Ultra Ball because of you play 2 Executes. You can set up very fast, and then you deal 150 damage against the Pokemon EX, move all the damage away, deal 150 again, and then you have 300 damage to deal with, and then you can knock out a lot of Pokemon at once. This is how Empoleon Dusknoir works. Against this deck you have the best matchup. This is almost auto-win, because they can't one-hit knock out Flygon. Muscle Band is not in this format, so the maximum damage they can deal against Flygon is 120. So they deal 120 against Flygon, and you play Max Potion. They deal 120 against Flygon, you play Max Potion. And then you play Junkam for Max Potion, and another Junkam for Max Potion. So you get 4 free turns of Sand Slammer. Of course, at the beginning you let 1 Pokemon get knocked out, so you can always twins for Max Potion. Yeah, and then you get 4 free turns. This is 4 times 120 damage. And then you knock out all of their Dusknoirs. And then you're safe, you don't even need to play then Max Potion again. Attack 1 or twice with Accelgor, and then you have all the damage you need to win the game. So, very good matchup against Empoleon Dusknoir. The next deck I play against very often is version Genesect Celebi. I think this really depends on how well they draw. If they have, like, when they went first, get G-Booster down, and attach 3 energies to Genesect, then it's very hard to come around. Of course, you try to attack with Pichu first, and search your deck for Trapinch, Duskull, Spiritomb, Mr. Mime. Like, you get 2 Trapinch, yeah, like 1 Duskull, and then these 2 guys. Sometimes I don't get Mr. Mime, and rather a second Duskull, depending on who went first. But you don't get Shelmet at the beginning. You wait until he gets Red Signal and a few knockouts. I usually only get 1 Duskull because the opponent's priority is on Spiritomb, so he rather get Spiritomb away. And if he doesn't get the Spiritomb away, the Dusknoir isn't that important because your Spiritomb stays in place, so your Flygon doesn't get knocked out. If nothing is priced, you win against version Genesect. If any of these cards is priced, like the Spiritomb is the most important card, Mr. Mime can become quite annoying. If Pichu is priced and you have a good start, it doesn't matter. Especially with Junkam for Level Ball, and then play N, and then use Tropical Beach, you can set up very fast. And of course, when your opponent doesn't have a Celebi start and then gets everything done very quick, he has to attack with Emerald Slash, and then you get a lot of time to do a lot of things. And then at the end, you can draw your last prize cards with Mewtwo. Also, when you're Spiritomb on your bench, you can attack with Mewtwo, then play Max Potion, attack with Mewtwo again to get easy 200 damage off. And this is also very good, especially because the active, they don't want to bench more Genesect, so they often attach plasma energies to the active Genesect, so it has 4, maybe 5 energy cards, and then Mewtwo is even better. And since you play 4 double colorless anyways, but you never need them, you only need 1 for Accelgor, then you can use all the other double colorless for Mewtwo. So version Genesect should be very easy. The next deck is a Languorous Mewtwo Garbodor. So this deck is hard to beat if they go first and have a good start. So when you knock out the Garbodor and have a Flygon in play, you usually win. Because then you attack once with Accelgor and they have so much damage that you can knock out everything. But if they go first, get a good start, have turn 2 Garbodor, and then get Hypnotoxic Laser, Whirlbank City Gym, and you don't draw into Candy Flygon, then you have big problems. In this matchup, Pichu again is very useful, because you can get a lot of Pokemon at once. And then they will knock out the Pichu with either just Laser, Whirlbank, and end their turn, or with Languorous, but then you have Mr. Mime already in play. You should have 2 Duskulls, 1 Shelmet, 2 Trapinch, and then you can evolve into Flygon and draw cards. It depends a bit on how good you draw, but that should be not a very hard matchup. The next deck is Durant, which I actually never played against. The first Legacy games I ever had were all with my Durant, and I played so many mirror matches, but I never played against Durant with Flygon, but this should be a very easy matchup. Once your opponent flips Durant, you just search for Candy Flygon and then end turn, end turn, end turn. You have 2 Super Rods and 2 Junk Arms, so you can always shuffle this back. Then you can use Professor Oak and N to shuffle your hand back. So this should be a very easy matchup against Durant. There shouldn't be any problem. Then any electric deck should also not be too hard. Against Rayquaza Electric, you can use Mewtwo and Accelgor. And then you have to use the trick. So I think I forgot to talk about this, but a lot of people back in the day did the misplay that they put Flygon active and then use Tropical Beach. In theory, this is a good play, but only if you are very sure your opponent is not able to knock out your Flygon. When you know your opponent is able to knock out your Flygon, you put a Pokemon you don't really need, like Mr. Mime, Spiritomb, Pichu, one of the extra Shelmets, one of the extra Duskulls, or one of the extra Trapinch active. Then you let your opponent knock out that Pokemon. Then you put Flygon active, and because your opponent knocked out the Pokemon during your opponent's turn, Sandslammer still activates. So then you get 60 damage off, and then you have more damage. Then you can use Deck and Cover, maybe knock out the threat, the only Pokemon that is able to knock out your Flygon, and then the Flygon stays in place. So this is often you have to put something different active, and not the Flygon itself, to get a lot of damage off. So keep this in mind when you play the deck. But when you do this a lot against Electric, you get rid of all the Electrics and you use Mewtwo to knock out the last Pokemon. They either play Rayquaza, which cannot do anything when they have no Electric in play, or they play any Pokemon that needs a lot of energy cards and their Mewtwo deals a lot of damage. And always you can get some damage with Accelgor. And Tynamo only has 40 HP, so sometimes you get easy knockouts on these guys. Then Plasma. Also, I never had a problem against Plasma because they need a full bench to really do a lot, and Accelgor and Mewtwo both do a lot of damage against them. Usually they use one Kyurem, that is a big problem at the beginning, but once you get that knocked out with Mewtwo double colors, it's very easy to knock these out. Your opponent has problems, they need to use Thunderous and a lot of Deoxys in play, and then you can use your Flygons. And then you win very, very quick. Of course, Mr. Mime prevents them from rushing you. Pichu also is kind of good in this matchup, depending on how many basic Pokemon you get in your first turn without using Pichu. It's not a Pokemon you necessarily need, but it's one of these sacrificable Pokemon, and it's a very easy prize for your opponent to take, so you can play Twins very fast. And the last deck in the worst matchup you have, I think this is the only one that I would say is actually very bad, is Blastoise Keldeo. The problem with Blastoise Keldeo is that they one-hit knock out Flygon, they have a lot of HP, and they can use Rush In and prevent deck and cover, paralyze stuff. You deal 100 damage with Accelgor, which is great, but once they have 4 energies on both Keldeos, it doesn't matter if you knock out the Blastoise. It's not too bad in theory, like, I think you have a win chance of 1 out of 3 games. But I didn't play a lot against Blastoise Keldeos, but every time I played against it, I lost. However, you should be able, with Mewtwo and Accelgor, they both deal a lot of damage, and then you promote Flygon and put Sacrifice Pokemon active. This is one of the matchups I don't like to attack with Pichu, because then they can immediately play Rare Candy Blastoise and attack faster. So depending on how well your opponent's start was, I would recommend not using Pichu. But of course, if you have to, you have to. So yeah, that's it. And these were all the decks I encountered. Like I said, I played 40 games with Legacy with this deck, and then a few with Durant, which I don't recommend playing Durant. Then there is also like this budget deck, which only uses Snorlax, Lasers, and Blockade. It says your opponent can't retreat, and then you play Junk Arm and Pokemon Catcher. Try to get something from your opponent active, and then just wait until you don't have any deck cards left. Against this deck you win here as well. And well, I think when I get the cards, I might do a few other Legacy videos. Tell me what you think, and I will link another video where I actually played this Flygon. I played it in a tournament, and I won the tournament. It was the first Legacy tournament I ever played, and I will show you round 2 and round 3, because round 1 I encountered not a great deck, but these games were very interesting. So make sure to check this out, leave feedback, and see you next time.